Samsara dava nalalida loka Janaya karanya ganaganatvam Samsara dava nalalida loka Janaya karanya ganaganatvam Praptasya kalyana gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Mahaprabhu Kirtanitya Gita Vaditya Madhya Manasora Sena Romancha Kampa Shutaranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Shri Vigrahara Dhananitya Nana Shingarata Mandira Majanado Yuktasya Bhaktam Shaniyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Chaturvidashi Bhagavat Prasada Swadhana Triptan Haribhakta Sangam Kritaiva Triptim Bhajata Sadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Shri Radhika Madhavayara Para Madhurya Lila Guna Rupa Nam Nam Pratikshana Swadhana Lalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Nikunjayuna Radikali Siddhai Yaya Libiyuktirapekshaniyya Tatrati Daksharati Balabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Sakshadarit Vina Samasta Shaste Uktastata Bhavyata Eva Sadbhi Kintu Prabhoya Priyeva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Yasya Prasada Bhagavad Prasado Yasya Prasada Nagati Kutopi Dayam Stuvam Sasya Yasya Sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. 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 Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vashecha Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Nilamada Radha Nilamada Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Nila Madhav Radha Nila Madhav Shri Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhaja. Jaya Sitaram Jaya Sitaram Jaya Sitaram Jaya Lakshman Hanuman. Jaya Goranita Jaya Goranita Jaya Goranita Jaya Goranita. Nitya Gora Haribo, 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 Nitya Gora Haribo.
Jai Om Shri Pada Pramhamsa Pratika Acharya Shtata Shata Shishima Divine Grace Abrachana Rinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya PPT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pada Pramhamsa Pratika Acharya Ashtota Shata Shishima Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai. Nama Acharya Srila Haridasa Thakur Ki Jai. Prime se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Brajabhumi Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Navadvipa Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Ayodhya Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Samavrita Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande Hari. All glory to assembled devotees, all glory to assembled devotees, all glory to assembled devotees, all glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga, all glory to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Prahlad Ladadaine. Hiranyakashi Purvakshaha. Shilatankanakalaye. Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimha. Yato Yato Yami Tato Narsimha. Bahir Narsimha Hridaye Narsimha. Narasimha Madhim Sharanam Prapade. Tav Kar Kamalavare Nakha Madbhud Shringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubhringam Ishavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadish Hare Jai Jagadish Hare Jai Jagadish Hare Kamalavare Nakham Adbhud Shringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu तनुभृङ्गां केशवधृता रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय हो नरसिंहदेव 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 जय हो नरसिंहदेव जय हो भक्त शिरोमणि प्रहलाद महाराज भक्त शिरोमणि प्रहलाद महाराज जय हो लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय हो प्रहलाद नरसिंह जय हो लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय हो प्रहलाद नरसिंह जय हो नर हरि नर हरि नर हरि जय हो नर हरि जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय श्रीला प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय श्रीला गुरुदेव विघ्न विनाशक सर मंगलकारी श्री नरसिंहदेव भगवान की जय प्रहलाद महाराज की जय निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल जय जय श्री राधे जय जय श्री राधे जय जय श्री राधे श्याम
वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशव सच विष्णु पाके पदे देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशव सच विष्णु देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशव सच विष्णु पाके पदे देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशव सच विष्णु देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशव सच विष्णु पाके पदे देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशव सच विष्णु देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः वृंदा देवी तुलसी महारानी की जय
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः राधा कृष्णा सेवा पाओ ए अभिलाषी राधा कृष्णा सेवा पाओ यही अभिलाषी जे तो मारा शरण लोय तारा वांछा पूर्ण होय कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावनवासी मोराए अभिलाष विलास कुंजे दियो वास नयने हेरिबो सदा युगल रूप राशे এই নিবেদন ধরো সখীর অনুগত করো এই নিবেদন ধরো সখীর অনুগত করো সেবাধিকার দিয়ে করো নিজ দাসী सेवाधिकार दिए करो निज दासी दीन कृष्ण दासे को ये जेना मोरा होय दीन कृष्ण दासे को ये जेना मोरा होय श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा इन भाषी श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा जिन भाषी यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्याधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्याधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्याधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी
Vrindaye Tulsi Devaya Priyaye Keshavaya Shicha Vishnu Bhakti Prati Devi Sachivate Namo Namaha Vrindaye Tusideva Priyaye Keshavashacha Vishnu Bhakti Prati Devi Sachivatai Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tusideva Priyaye Keshavashacha Vishnu Bhakti Prati Devi Sachivatai Namo Namaha. Tulsi Devi Maharani Ki Jai. See, beloved of Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire is to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has his wishes fulfilled. Bestowing your mercy upon him, you make your resident Vrindavan. My desire is that you grant me your residence and pleasure for Shri Vrindavan. Thus, within my vision, I'll always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower for the Kyahar damsels of Raja. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maidservant. This very fallen lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always swim in the love of Shri Radha and Govinda. Tulsi Devi Maharani Ki Jai.
There are 10 fences in the method chanting holy names that should be avoided, and they are as follows. 1. To bless the devotees who dedicate their life for the propagation of holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names of demigods like Lord Shiva or Brahma to be equal to independent names of Lord Vishnu. 3. The disobeying orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme Vedic literature, to pursue the Vedic version. 5. To consider glory chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities and strength to chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which offer in the Vedas the fruit of activities of karma kanda. 9. To instruct a faith expression about God's holy name. And to maintain material attachments. 10. To not a complete faith in chanting holy names. It is also an offense to be attended to like chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 fences in order to achieve desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us for most humble obeisance unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchkalpatarabhyascha kripasindarbhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Guru Astaka prayers. Shri Chaitanya Shikshastakam Ki Jai.
Cheto Darpana Marjanam Pavamaha Davagni Nirvapanam Shri Kairava Chandrika Vidaranam Vidya Vadhujivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamita Svadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Jayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bahudani Cha Sarva Shaktis Tatra Pitani Amita Smaranina Kalaha Etati Shritava Kripa Bhagavam Mamapi Durudaivam Yishi Samihajini Nanuragaha Srinatapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishnuna Amanina Manatena Kirtaniya Sadaharihi Natanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitam Bhajagadishakamaye Mama Janmani Janmanishware Bhavatat Bhakti Rahaituki Twai Ai Nanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Pavam Buddha Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Stita Duri Sadvisam Vichintaya Nayanam Galatasrudaraya Vadanam Gatyatudaya Jira Pulakaya Nishitam Vapukada Tavanam Grahane Bhavishyati Yugayitam Nimesena Chaksusa Parvisaitam Sunyayitam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahename Ashrishyava Padaratam Pinastumam Adarsanam Mamato Kurotuva Yata Tatava Vidatu Lampato Mat Prananatha Susa Eva Naparaha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai. Glory to Shri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes fire of conditioned life with repeated birth and death. The Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rage of the benediction movement. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by holy names, but I have no attraction.
One should chant the holy
name
name
of the humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw on the street. One should be more tolerant of the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O Son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I fall into this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. Decorated with tears of love, flowing constantly when I chant your name. When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like Dwalkar somewhere. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and he shall remain so even if he enters me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Saksastakam Ki Jai. Shri Guru Pranama prayers Ki Jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shaptam Yena Bhutali Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jatahapachikamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahagana Raghunattam Vitam Tam Sajivam Saidvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamsha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desitarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Namine Shri Varshavani Devi Dayaya Prabhaptaye Krishna Sambandha Vidyana Dayane Prabhavin Namaha Madhur Ujjvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaurakarna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostate Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Nitarine Rupanuga Viruta Pasidanta Dvantaharine Namo Guru Kishoraya Sakshat Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Padambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachitanandanamine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gaura Virabhumistvam Nirdesh Sajana Priya Vaishnava Sabhabama Shri Jaganatayate Namaha Vanchakalpa Turabhischa Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Premapadayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gurachuse Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhakta Bhatanam Bhakta Kyam Namami Bhakta Saktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Jayatam Surator Pangor Mahamanda Mater Gati Matsarva Swapadambo Jor Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vinduranya Kalpadamadaha Shrimad Ratnagara Simaslastato Shrimad Radha Shri Govinda Devo Prastali Bihi Sevyamana Smarami Shriman Rasa Rasaram Bhivam Sivata Tatastita Karsam Venuswane Gopir Gopinatak Striyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Guru Pranama prayers ki jai, Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Nadiradi Govinda Sarvakarna Karanam Chintamani Prakasat Masukalpa Vriksha Lakshavitesha Surabhira Pipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambram Sevyamanam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venum Kvanantam Aravinda Dalayataksam Parhavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandarpa Kotika Maniya Vishesha Sobham Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasat Vanamadya Vamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranayakeli Kilavilasam Shyamam Tribanga Lalitanyata Prakasam Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Rittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadi Manatta Rupam Adhyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedesa Durlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakta Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantasta Koti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Ayoratapi Manasam Nipangamanam Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichintatatve Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantavirtor Vichaitam Jagadanda Kotim Yaschakti Rasti Jagadanda Chayayadanta Andantarasta Paramani Chayantarastam Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhagavata Jastataiva Samprapya Rupa Mahimasanayanabusa Suktarya Meva Magama Pratitaistavanti Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitabhis Tadvirya Eva Nijarupa Dayakalavi Goloka Eva Nivasata Kilatma Bhuto Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksadeva Hidesa Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalanya Menatistan Nanavataram Akaro Bhuvanesa Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramapamam Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the Supreme Godhead. He has an eternal, blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor who is tending the cows, yielding all desire, in abodes built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purpose trees, always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds of thousands of Lakshmis or Gopis. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is adept in playing on his flute, with blooming eyes like lotus petals, with head decked with peacock feather, with a figure of beauty tinged with the hue of blue clouds, and his unique loveliness charming millions of cupids. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, round whose neck is swinging a garland of flowers, beautified with the moon locket, whose two hands are adorned with the flute and jeweled ornaments, who always revels in pastimes of love, whose graceful threefold bending form of Sham Sundar is eternally manifest. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose transcendental form is full of bliss, truth, and substantiality, and is thus full of the most dazzling splendor. Each of the limbs of that transcendental figure possesses in himself the full-fledged functions of all the organs, and eternally sees, maintains, and manifests the infinite universes, both spiritual and mundane. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is inaccessible to the Vedas, but obtainable by pure, unalloyed devotion of the soul, who is without a second, who is not subject to decay, is without a beginning, whose form is endless, who is the beginning and the eternal Purusha, yet he is a person possessing the beauty of blooming youth. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, only the tip of the toe of whose lotus feet is approached by the yogis who aspire after the transcendental and betake themselves to pranayama by drilling the respiration, or by the jnanis who try to find out the non-differentiated Brahman by the process of elimination of the mundane, extending over thousands of millions of years. He is an undifferentiated entity, as there is no distinction between the potency and the possessor thereof. In his work of creation of millions of worlds, his potency remains inseparable. All the universes exist in him, and he is present in his fullness in every one of the atoms that are scattered throughout the universe at one and the same time. Such is the primeval Lord, whom I adore. I adore the same Govinda, the primeval Lord, in whose praise men who are imbued with devotion sing the mantra suktas told by the Vedas. By gaining their appropriate beauty, greatness, thrones, conveyances, and ornaments, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, residing in his own realm, Goloka, with Radha, resembling his own spiritual figure, the embodiment of the ecstatic potency possessed of the 64 artistic activities, in the company of her confidants, Shakis, embodiments of the extensions of her bodily form, permeated and vitalized by his ever blissful spiritual rasa. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Sham Sundar, Krishna himself, with inconceivable, innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts with the eye of devotion tinged with the salve of love. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who manifested himself personally as Krishna, and the different avatars in the world in the forms of Rama, Nrsimha, Vamana, etc., as the subjective portions. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai, Gaura Premanandi, Haribol, Haribol. Srimad Bhagavatam, Grantaraj ki jai, glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.1. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janmadyasya yata niviyaditaratascha avigyaswarat tene brahma hridaya dikavayati muyati yatsurayaha tejo vani madam yata vinimayo yatra nisti sargo misha damna svena sada nirastakuhakam satyam param dimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there's no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen on fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of material nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the supreme absolute truth. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.2. Dharma Pujita Kaitravotra Matsuranam Satam Vedyam Vastavam Matra Vastu Sividam Tapo Antaryon Mulamam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krita Krimvak Paririshvara Sadyor Hidi Avarudyate Trakriti Bihisu Subhistakshanat. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva, in its maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.3. Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam sukhamukad amrita javya samyatam bibata bhagavatam rasam alayanam unmuhur aho bhavakaha. O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desired true Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini. Namaste Saraswati Deve Guruvani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desitarine. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 9, verse number 25. Sosav adabra karuno bhagavan vividha. Prema smitena nayanam buruham vijim man. Utaya vishwa vijayaya chano vishadam. Madhya girapananaya tat purusha purana. Sa, he the Lord, aso, that, adabra, unlimited, karuna, merciful, Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, virida, excessive, prema, love, smitena, by smiling, nayana amburuham, the lotus eyes, Rajimban, by opening, Uttaya, for flourishing, Vishma Vijayaya, for glorifying the cosmic creation, Cha, as also, Na, our, Visadam, dejection, Madhya, by sweet, Jira, words, Apanayatat, let him kindly remove, Purusha, the supreme, Purana, oldest. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Lord who is supreme and is the oldest of all is unlimitedly merciful. I wish that he may smilingly bestow his benediction upon me by opening his lotus eyes. He can uplift the entire cosmic creation and remove our dejection by kindly speaking his directions. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Let's repeat this translation because it's very, very special. So repeat after me. The Lord who is supreme is the oldest of all, is unlimitedly merciful. I wish that he may smilingly bestow his benediction upon me by opening his lotus eyes. He can uplift the entire cosmic creation and remove our dejection by kindly speaking his directions. This is something you could repeat every day. It's a profound prayer by Lord Brahma. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Lord is ever increasingly merciful upon the fallen souls of this material world. The whole cosmic manifestation is a chance for all to improve themselves in devotional service to the Lord, and everyone is meant for that purpose. So we learned that the real purpose of material creation is to give everyone, and that means everyone, from the aquatics, plants, mammals, bugs, all kinds of different creatures, and the plants and so forth, a chance to go back, and human beings, of course, a chance to go back to Godhead. And here it's saying the whole cosmic manifestation is a chance for all to improve themselves in devotional service to the Lord, and everyone is meant for that purpose. The Lord expands himself into many personalities who are either self-expansions or separated expansions. So either they're expansions of Krishna himself, or they are expansions of Krishna's, let's say, separated expansions, meaning all the living entities. Whereas the self-expansions are the Lord himself. In other words, it says, the personalities of the individual souls are separated expansions, whereas the self-expansions are the Lord himself. The self-expansions are predominators, and the separated expansions are predominated for reciprocation of transcendental bliss with the supreme form of bliss and knowledge, meaning the Lord. So this is who we actually are. This is identifying us eternally. We are the separated expansions of the Lord. That means we have a unique personality, and the Lord has his unique personality, and we are meant to glorify the Lord. And therefore it says, the Lord expands himself into many personalities who are either self-expansions or separated expansions. The personalities of the individual souls are his separated expansions, whereas the self-expansions are the Lord himself. The self-expansions are predominators, and the separated expansions are predominated for reciprocation of transcendental bliss with the supreme form of bliss and knowledge, meaning the Lord. That is our purpose in life. That's who we are. That's our real identity. That's what we should identify with, right? You don't need this LGBTQ, XYZ. You don't need, Black Lives Matter, White Lives Matter, Green Lives Matter, this matters, that matters. We don't need any of that. This is who we are. It says that the separated expansions are predominated. That means we will always be subordinate to the Lord. You can never be equal to or greater than the Lord. And we are predominated for reciprocation of transcendental bliss with the supreme form of bliss and knowledge, meaning the supreme form of the Lord, his Satchitananda form. The liberated souls can join in this blissful reciprocation of predominator and predominated without materially concocted ideas. What are the materially concocted ideas? Well, how can I be independent if I have to surrender to someone? That is the biggest nonsense concept in the whole world. We are already surrendered. What are you talking about? We're surrendered to the process of birth, old age, disease, and death. We're surrendered to eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. We're surrendered already by the lust, anger, greed, envy, jealousy, and hatred. Right? So we're already surrendered. There's no question of being independent. If we were independent, we wouldn't be subject to any of these things. The fact that we're subject to all of these things means that we're already surrendered. But however, instead of being surrendered to eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, we should be surrendered to the Lord. The self-expansions are predominators. So you don't like to worship the Lord as Krishna, you prefer to worship him as Rama, that's okay. There's no difference between Lord Rama and Lord Krishna. There's maybe some slight little difference, but it's basically the same person, right? Or, I actually like Lord Nrsingadev because he's got these long nails. Okay, fine. You can worship Lord Nrsingadev. That is Krishna himself, right? Or I want to worship, Narayana. Okay, that's fine. That's Krishna also, right? These are expansions of the Lord. So, it's like, there's a saying in English, 6 in 1, and I forget, that's a proverb. Anyway, whether you're worshiping Krishna or Balaram or the first Chaturvyuha or the second Chaturvyuha or Sankarsan or Narayana or the Vishnu incarnations, they're all Krishna. So they're expansions of the Lord to attract the attention of people and to reciprocate with the Lord. So it says here, the self-expansions are predominators, and the separated expansions are predominated for reciprocation of transcendental bliss with the supreme form of bliss and knowledge. That supreme form of bliss and knowledge is Krishna in any one of his expansions. The liberated souls can join in this blissful reciprocation of predominator and predominated without materially concocted ideas. Now, what are the materially concocted ideas? I'm going to talk about that in a second. The liberated souls can join in a blissful reciprocation of predominator and predominated without materially concocted ideas. The typical example of such a transcendental exchange between the predominator and the predominated is the Lord's Rasa Leela with the gopis. The gopis are predominated expansions of the internal potency, and therefore the Lord's participation in the Rasa Leela dance is never to be considered like the mundane relationship of man and woman. Now, that is the materially concocted idea. People say, oh, there's this dude, Krishna, he's like us guys, right? He's trying to dance with other women, and he's always looking for new victims for his sense gratification. No, sir, that's completely wrong. You're a nonsense person to even think of such a thing, you see. But this is what's going on. You see these Rajasthani paintings, of Krishna enjoying with the gopis. But their understanding is the whole thing is just mundane. No, it's not mundane. And therefore, so now there's a little, let's say, nuance here. What's that nuance? It says, the gopis are predominated expansions of the internal potency, and therefore the Lord's participation in Rasa Leela dance is never to be considered like mundane relationship of man and woman. It is rather the highest perfectional stage of the exchange of feelings between the Lord and the living entities. The Lord gives the fallen souls the chance for this highest perfection of life. Now, wait a minute. Right before this, it said that the gopis are predominated expansions of the internal potency. And now it's saying the Lord gives the fallen souls the chance for this highest perfection of life. So what does he mean here? Because previously, a few sentences before that, he's talking about the internal potency, the gopis. And now he's saying fallen souls have a chance also for this highest perfection of life. Well, when Lord Ramachandra appeared, the great sages in the jungles where the Lord was passing through, they developed a desire to have a conjugal relationship with the Lord, but they couldn't do it because they were men. So they prayed for this, and in a future life, they took the form of gopis, and they actually engaged in Rasa Lila with the Lord and went back to Godhead. Now this is very profound philosophical knowledge, that even fallen persons, if they become attracted by the Lord, whether they're male or female, doesn't matter, in a future life, they can engage in Rasa Lila when the Lord appears in the material world. And then he takes them back to Godhead. This is real knowledge. This opens the path for everyone to go back to Godhead. It just depends what we are attracted to. If we become attracted to Krishna, it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, you can, in some future date, when the Lord is in the material world, and he's in all the material worlds, he's coming regularly all the time, you could engage in the Rasa Lila with him, and then he would take you back to Godhead. The Lord gives the fallen souls the chance for this highest perfection of life. Lord Brahma is entrusted with the management of the complete cosmic show, and therefore he prays that the Lord bestow his blessings upon him so that he may execute its purpose. What is the purpose of creation? It's to give everybody a chance to go back to Godhead. That's the real purpose. It's not to, for Ukraine to defeat Russia or Russia to defeat Ukraine. That's not the purpose of this material world. And it's not to become this gender or that gender. That's not the purpose of the world. It's to put a stop to all these nonsense things and be able to reciprocate with the Lord in loving devotion and go back to Godhead. That's the real purpose of the creation. And now I'm going to tell you a story. It's a very interesting story. I have a whole big web page of wisdom stories, and I'm not telling you that so you go and read them. But there's one interesting, very interesting story, because here it says, the liberated souls can join in the blissful reciprocation. He says, the liberated souls can join the blissful reciprocation of the predominator and predominated without materially concocted ideas. Okay, now this story is about materially concocted ideas. So there was once a king who instructed, who was instructed by a false teacher, a Mayavadi. And the Mayavadi taught him that there's only oneness. There's no varieties. So what did that mean exactly? He said that there are no differentiations in the ultimate reality. Everything we perceive as individual and different is an illusion. All is one. I am you, and you are me. We are thee, and thee as us. There is no difference in oneness. There is only oneness and no duality. So he convinced this king of this philosophy that all is one. The king was impressed by the implications of this philosophy of oneness. So after he had become, let's call it, bamboozled by this Mayavadi nonsense guy, he goes and talks to his wife, and he tells him how he's impressed by the implications of the philosophy of oneness. And when he spoke to the queen, he told her how much he was impressed by the philosophy of oneness. He could see its far-reaching implications for his life. And she asked what he meant by that. And he said, all is one. Don't you understand? All is one. Therefore, I shall now marry many wives, because there's no difference between yourself and the other women. All is one. The queen was shocked when she heard this and very upset, but she didn't show her upset by the king's new philosophy. She had a guru, so she immediately went to her guru and asked if the idea of oneness that the king espoused was true or false. He said that there is oneness, but the king's explanation of it was wrong. And his guru's explanation of it was wrong. Later, she could demonstrate the real concept of oneness. She asked how she could show the king that his idea of oneness was wrong. And the guru said, look, I have always instructed you, and you have always listened to what I've said. So you're a very good student and shishya, and I treat you like my own child. I will never mislead you. Just trust me, follow what I say, and I guarantee you this whole nonsense will go away. So she said, okay, but how could she show the king that his idea of oneness was wrong? So her guru instructed her, and she followed his advice perfectly. She had complete faith in her guru. The next day, the queen prepared a sumptuous lunch and invited the king and many honored guests, including the false teacher, the Mayavadi, that instructed her husband that all is one. She arranged for the false teacher to sit next to the king, and she insisted on serving them personally both all the preparations that she prepared. And she said, I am glorifying today all is one, because I completely accept my husband's guru's philosophy. So, she arranged for the false teacher to sit next to the king, and she served them both all the preparations. She purposely served everything in precious china porcelain. As her teacher instructed her, one of the preparations was especially made for glorifying all as one. And she made it with fresh things that she got from the cows that morning. When she served her husband and this false teacher the special preparations she made to glorify all as one, they both looked at it. They sort of smelled it. And they were a little bit surprised. And when they started to eat it, they started to cough it up and spit it out, because it smelled like cow dung. And they both got disgusted because they were served cow dung as all is one, in the same plate as all the delectable preparations. The king jumped up, and his guru jumped up and rebuked his wife with harsh words. Why have you served cow dung with such tasty food? This is nonsense. She said calmly, my dear husband, I have accepted your philosophy that all is one. If you see no difference between myself and any other woman, why should I see any difference between tasty food and cow dung? Please eat everything on your plate and demonstrate you believe your new philosophy. She embarrassed the king and discredited his teacher's philosophy in front of many invited guests. The king suppressed his anger and left the dining hall without saying a word. The next day he put his so-called guru, all is one, in prison. And later apologized to his wife, who demonstrated that all is one is all nonsense. When the king and queen resumed their normal relationship and all was calm, the queen summoned her wise guru and asked how to demonstrate the real concept of oneness. He began to describe an ancient history. There was, and there wasn't, a poor man and his pious wife who was very beautiful. One day their spiritual teacher came to visit their village. The teacher had 2 disciples in the village. One was a rich merchant and the other a poor man. The teacher traveled with a large group of disciples. He sent 2 disciples to the rich man's house so that he could arrange dinner and lodging for his group. The rich man was so thrilled at receiving the good news that he immediately began to make preparations for the teacher's arrival. But he forgot to properly receive the 2 disciples who were ignored and left feeling that they were slighted. The 2 disciples reported back to the teacher that they were denied proper respect at the home of the rich man. The teacher decided to visit his poor disciple and accept whatever his poor disciple could give as an offering to his entourage. The large group arrived at the humble dwelling of the poor disciple. The teacher knocked on the door of the entrance. The poor man was not at home. His wife was taking a bath, and the only ragged cloth she had for a dress was hanging in the backyard to dry. She called out, "Who is it?" The teacher answered. She explained that her only dress was hanging out to dry. He said, "That's okay. You come and open the door." As soon as she opened the door, the guru threw a shawl onto her, into her room. She wrapped herself in a shawl and came out to greet the guru. He asked the woman if she could feed his large group. She said, "Yes, of course. I consider such a service a great blessing." She offered fresh water from her well and directed the entire group where they could bathe and relax while she prepared their lunch. She knew very well that there was no money or food to feed anyone, and her husband was not at home. He was out trying to beg for food. The young wife decided she could visit the local grocer who had often tried to take advantage of her because she was poor. She hurried to see him and made a proposal that he supply whatever she needed for her teacher and his companions, and she would come to him in the night and satisfy his desires. He was thrilled that she was finally yielding to his advances. She arranged to deliver everything she asked for immediately. She cooked a marvelous feast for her honored guests, and they were all fed to their satisfaction. Her husband came home and was thrilled to see his holy teacher, but he was confounded as to how his wife fed everyone such a grand feast. Later, his wife explained what she agreed to do for the food. Her husband was not upset because he could understand that she was ready to sacrifice everything to please the teacher, the guru, and thus serve God's servant. He told her that they should explain everything to, and this was actually Ramanujacharya, who was their teacher or guru, and he would certainly forgive her and perhaps find a way to save her honor. After the dinner, when everyone is satisfied, they humbly approached the teacher and gently explained their predicament. He understood. He said, "My child, you are a faithful wife and completely chaste. Unfortunately, there are lusty men in this world, and they are anxious to take advantage of innocent women like you. I suggest you take a plate of the sanctified food that remains from my plate and offer it to the grocer with the words, 'My teacher or my guru asked me to bring you this holy food. Please partake of it and be blessed.'" So the husband and wife proceeded to the grocer's house and presented him with the holy food. The woman entered his house and gave him the plate and repeated the teacher's words. The grocer was surprised. He asked if she came alone, and she said her husband was waiting outside. The grocer looked at her hesitatingly. He asked her to call her husband inside. While tasting the food, the grocer felt a strange feeling of being blessed. When he finished the delicious meal, he looked at the husband and wife and began to apologize. In fact, he fell on his knees and begged them to forgive him. The husband and wife were genuinely amazed at the sudden transformation of the grocer. They attributed it to the teacher's or the guru's holy blessing that came with the food or the prasadam. The grocer asked them if they would introduce him to their guru. They went together back to the poor man's house and sat at the feet of the guru, who was pleased to see the grocer. The holy teacher spoke about the power of chastity of a woman and how God blesses such a woman who is faithful to God, her husband, and the holy teachers. He explained how fortunate the grocer is to have been engaged in helping the woman to serve holy persons. Due to her offering the grocer's food to God and his holy representatives, the grocer had become purified of his nasty mentality and repented his sinful lust for the chaste woman. The grocer had real tears of repentance and joy. Hearing the kind words of the teacher, he begged the teacher to accept him as a disciple and continue to teach him to stay on the path of virtue. The wise man finished his story. He added a few words to make sure the queen understood. He said, "Real oneness is realized by first understanding that we are all eternal individuals and God is the supreme individual. If the members of a family remain loyal to the Father and work cooperatively, there is oneness among all the individuals of the family. They work cooperatively to please the Father and maintain the stability and welfare of the family. They are benefited by their oneness of purpose. Similarly, when we serve God cooperatively by following his instructions, we become one with God and still maintain our individuality eternally. We enter into a relationship of love and devotion to the unique God. That relationship of oneness, of purpose, by serving the instructions of God, unites us in the family of God. This is real oneness. So at that point, the rich disciple of Ramanuja came, and he said, "How come you didn't come and eat in my house? We prepared such a big feast for you." And Ramanuja said, "Well, I'll demonstrate why." He said, "Bring me some of your food." And he got some of the food that the lady had presented, his disciple had presented. And he put some in one hand and put the other in the other hand. And he squeezed them. When he squeezed the merchant's food, blood came out. And when he squeezed the wife's food, ghee came out. He said, "This is why I didn't eat in your house." In other words, the merchant who didn't properly respect the two disciples of Ramanuja, he came to organize the meal and make preparations to properly receive Ramanujacharya and his disciples. There was a fault, and the fault was that the merchant was actually an exploiter, even though he was a disciple. But the poor family, husband and wife, they were not exploiters. They were completely surrendered to the Guru. And they were ready to do anything to please their Guru. She was ready to give herself even to that nasty guy so that she could please her Guru. So this is a very interesting story. The title of the story is All is One, All is One is All Nonsense. And this is what the Mayavad philosophy is. It has ruined India already, and it's continuing to ruin India. And it must be defeated. Otherwise, there's no hope for Sanatana Dharma in India until this Mayavad philosophy is completely smashed. And that is why Prabhupada came to the Western world. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gurumani Pacharini Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskati Desatani. So he has his two pranam mantras. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Tinamini. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gurumani Pacharini Nirvisesa Sunyavadi. So Nirvisesa Sunyavadi are the two major Mayavad blocks or movements. One is Sunyavad, that's Buddhism, and the other is Mayavad. So, Prabhupada's purpose is he came to the West to smash the Buddhist philosophy and the Mayavad philosophy. And then he went back with the disciples he made in the West and brought them to India, all these American and European disciples, to smash the Mayavad philosophy and the Buddhist philosophy in India. So his pranam mantra is very, very important. He has two pranam mantras, but the second one is the mission of destroying or smashing and defeating Sunyavad and Mayavad. Okay? So now we understand more about his pranam mantras. Now we understand why he was always talking about the failure of Mayavad philosophy. And it's nothing new. It's been around since the beginning of time. And we should become experts in how to defeat this all is one is all nonsense philosophy, because it's ruining people's lives. It's entered into America also in the hippie movement, and also in the different types of yoga groups all over the place. It's entered in the in the West and in Europe. So it's up to us to do something to change this. We can only do it if we're educated in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. That's why it's important to come to class. Listen carefully. Every day we're going to learn something new. So I'll stop right there. Are there any questions? So what I read today was an example of, it says, the liberated souls can join in the blissful reciprocation of the predominator and the predominated without materially concocted ideas. So these materially concocted ideas are, this life, black lives matter, white lives matter, white supremacy is the only way to save this country, this thing, that thing, these are all concocted ideas. And they have to be defeated. And then people can get to the real purpose of life, which is to engage in the blissful glorification of the Lord, to get the mercy of the Lord, and go back to Godhead. Hari Bol. So any questions? Yes?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. If Krishna is Krishna, and if all universes are inside him, I don't get it when you say he's in every atom, and every universe has has atoms. So like how and all the universes are inside Krishna.
So you don't understand how he can be in all those places, is that right?
No. Like how can Krishna be in Krishna? Because the universes have Krishna inside of them, but Krishna has the universes inside of him.
Yeah. This is why you have to come to class. Now, this is a good question that you asked. Because Krishna is the Virat Rupa. Do you know what the Virat Rupa is? It's a gigantic form that encompasses all the universes in this galaxy, or everything in this one universe. And there are many universes. So there are many Virat Rupas. And the Virat Rupa is so big that it encompasses the whole universe. And it's a body and that Krishna assumes, in which everything, the mountains, the rivers, the people, the sun, the moon, everything is included in that transcendental body called Virat Rupa. But then again, he expands himself as Paramatma, which is present in every atom of the universe. So not only he encompasses the whole universe, he's also present in every atom of the universe. So he is the infinite and the infinitesimal at the same time. Now this is incomprehensible for people. Because no one can emulate that. No one can do anything like that, even come close to it. But Krishna has this power that is unlimited. So this is what we have to learn. This is philosophy of Krishna consciousness. This is why the more you learn about Krishna, the more you realize that no one is equal to Krishna, no one is greater than Krishna, that everyone is subordinate to Krishna. Then we become humble. Then we have faith that if I surrender to Krishna, all my problems are going to go away. and He's going to protect me, and I can go back to Godhead in this lifetime. So you have to learn these things, and you're going to learn them gradually. Just like your question was a very good question. How is it possible that He can encompass everything and at the same time be present in every little atom of the universe? Right? It seems impossible. It is for you and me, but not for Krishna. And He does it by His expansions. There are trillions and trillions of expansions of Paramatma. There are, besides this universe, many trillions of other universes. And most of them are bigger and more complicated than this universe. And it's all due to Krishna's expansions. He has unlimited expansions. And you're an expansion of Krishna, but you and I are separated expansions. That means we have our own individuality. And along with that individuality, we have limited free will. So we have to be trained to use our limited free will to go back to Godhead. But most people misuse their limited free will for sense gratification. Therefore, they get stuck in the material world, life after life, and suffer unnecessarily in the different 8,400,000 species. All this is very serious content and very, very serious knowledge. If we can understand this, then very easily we can go back to Godhead. If we think we know better or we are angry, why should I surrender to somebody? How can I be free if I surrender to God? Right? A lot of people think like that. How can I be free? How can I be independent if I surrender to God? But wait a minute. You're already surrendered to birth, old age, disease, and death. You're already surrendered to eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. You're already surrendered to many things. Men are surrendered to their wives. The wives are surrendered to their men. The husband and wife are both surrendered to the government or to the dog. Right? The wife is walking with the dog. The dog stops, and then plumps himself up and passes a stool. And the wife puts a plastic glove on backwards, picks up the stool with the plastic bag, and then turns it back like this, and then holds it like that, and then continues walking with the dog. Now you tell me, is she surrendered to the dog, or is the dog surrendered to her? She's surrendered to the dog, right? Or it could be the husband also walking the dog. So we're already surrendered, right? There was this one man, his name was Surinder, right?
Surrender not.
So his name was Surinder Nath. So the British used to call him Surrender Not. He's never going to be surrendered to us. So that's who the nonsense people are. They're surrender not. They're not going to surrender, but they're already surrendered. They just don't realize it because they're so dull-headed. They think they're independent when they go into the bar and start drinking and dancing and singing crazy songs and dating this thing and that thing. And I think this is the real life. This is the real, and then they make money on the stock market, or they make money in their business, and then they go to the casino to have a good time. This is all nonsense life, and it's all failure as a human being. We have to realize these things and not be fooled by them anymore. Any other questions? That was a good question. Okay, well, thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
So that was not a story that happened.
It's related to something that actually happened. Yeah. It's a powerful story.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma
Bandamui Savadhana Mate Jahara Prasade Bhai E Bhavatoriya Jai Krishna Prapti Hoy Jaha Hoy Te Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chite Te Koriya Kya Arana Kori Ho Mane Asha Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utama Gati Jai Prasad Pure Sarva Asha
Jai Prasad Pure Sarva Asa
Jai Prasad Pure Sarva Asha
Jai Prasad Pure Sarva
चक्षुदान दिलो जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से चक्षुदान दिलो जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते वेद गाय जहाँ चरित वेद गाय जहाँ चरित श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आधम जनर बंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आधम जनर बंधु लोकनाथ लोकेर जीवाना लोकनाथ लोकेर जीवाना आहा प्रभु कोरो दया देह मोरे पद चया आहा प्रभु कोरो दया देह मोरे पद चया ए बेजास कुशुकी भुवाना जय प्रभुपाद पतिता पवाना जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमति भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने
कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी नित्य नामिने
नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद
प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद
जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद
प्रभु नित्यानंद अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Nittai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nittai Gaura Hari Bol.
Jayam Vishnupad, Paramahansa Parvajikachasta, Saraswati Shishi Shimari's Divine Grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Vedanta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Dhamacharya Sri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Shri Kahor Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Vaiti Gadadhar Shri Vasaki Gaura Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gogopinath Sam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Gudan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapura Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Jamuna Maya Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premananda. All glories to the Assembled Devotees. All glories to the Assembled Devotees. All glories to the Assembled Devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Patita Pavana Ki Jai. Namaste Saraswati Devi. The lotus feet of our spiritual master, the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace we can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. I only wish to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus smell. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection and fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates. By him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor and Lord and master of devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter in your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavana Ki Jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari